wonderful scholars. Before we get started, I'm going to show you how to crop and how to add a black border. So first, we're going to go ahead and grab the square shape. Make sure that fill is at 0%. The outline is going to be 100%. The line width is going to be from 30 to 40. It really depends on your preference. Roundness 0% and cutout 0%. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to make a square. I'm going to drag it. And remember, feel free to zoom in and zoom out if that makes it easier for you. I went ahead and I added the border at a 40%. Just because when your border is thicker, it tends to stand out a little bit more. You can move it with your keyboard, with the arrows on your keyboard, or with your mouse. Again, whatever is easier to you. And you could either make it shorter from the sides, you can make it wider. Just play around, whatever. Like for example, right here, if I don't want to see this line, I could just go ahead and move it where you can't really see the line anymore. And I made a few mistakes here and there, but that's the beauty of the border. You can just get rid of them by closing it up a little. Once you have this, don't forget to click finish editing. Then I'm going to go ahead, use my crop tool, and I'm going to get started from the bottom. And even if you don't get it perfect the first time around, you can always just move it. Again, if it's not perfect, you can always click undo. I'm going to go ahead and apply crop, and this is how it looks. Later on, if you are not satisfied, you can always go ahead and recrop it, but for the sake of this lesson, I'm going to leave it like that. So now for the finishing touches. When I look at the original Picasso piece and when I look at my piece, they don't exactly look the same, but that's totally fine because it's cubism and abstraction with a few modifications. So what I'm going to do is, I notice that I'm still missing the hair. I'm going to go ahead and get my line tool. Again, I'm going to make sure that my fill, since I want to finish this faster, I'm going to make sure that my fill is at a pastel yellow. My outline is 100%, and my line width, I'm going to go ahead and change it until 6. Of course, if you don't want it, you can go ahead and select it and delete it. I'm going to go ahead and start on my hair. And yes, one tip is to keep zooming in and zooming out. So I'm going to get my line tool and I'm going to get started on the hair. So whatever lines I make, my fill is going to follow me. And if you're not satisfied with the hair, you can go ahead and select it. As always, click on it twice and then just move it around. And then click finish editing. For the details of the eye, I'm going to go ahead and use the line tool. Make sure that my fill is off. My outline is 100%. Opacity, line width 6. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. Now, if we look closely at the eye, again, let's not focus so much on the small details. We're going to focus on the outer shape. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and change it to 4, just in case. We don't want it to be too thick either. And if it is too thin at the end, we can always go ahead and change the line width. So I'm going to go ahead and make the shape. I'm going to start with the eyebrows. And again, if you want to change the opacity, since right here we see that the opacity is lighter, we can go ahead and click X. We can go ahead and change the opacity to maybe like a 75%. Or you can also get like a gray color. It really depends on what you prefer. And if it's too short, remember, you can go ahead and select it and click on it 2 times. If you make a mistake, just remember to undo. Now I'm going to go back to my opacity at 100%. I'm going to start with the shape of the eye. The eyelash actually comes out a little bit. And again, it does not have to be perfect. Zoom in a little bit more so you can see the line a little bit better. And actually you can fill it in with the entire line tool. So we get an eye similar to what we see here. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. And remember, feel free to change the length of the line. Whenever you feel like the opacity is too dark, or whenever you feel like your line is too thick, you can go ahead and change the line width. So in this case, the width might still be too big, so I'm going to go ahead and change it to 2.6 is enough, or 2.5. And I'm going based off what I see here. I'm just making shapes. And remember, when it's hard for your lines to connect, just go ahead and zoom in. If there's a line you don't want, just double click. When this line appears, just click erase. And you could shade this in with the fill-in tool, or you can do what I'm doing. And then we see the eyebrow. I'm going to change the opacity to a 75% like we did with the other one. And yes, you can go a little bit more into detail with this if you want. You can go ahead and make this a little bit darker, as we see there. You can make another dark line right here at the bottom. To copy what we have here. Opacity, remember, it is at a 75%. For the nose, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a thinner line. So I'm going to change the width to 3. I'm just going to leave it as is. And for the lips, I'm going to change the opacity to 100%. And the lips, it's just a line that goes this way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the line. Instead of black, I'm going to go ahead and make it orange. And again, you can use the line tool, or you can use, if you notice here, it kind of looks like a crayon effect. So if you want to change to the crayon effect, just remember that instead of line, you would just change it to crayon, which is right under the line. You could change the line width. And you can just go ahead and continue with your lines, freestyle. So you can do it kind of like with the crayon effect. You can even change the color. I feel like the color might be a little bit too light. So you see how the crayon effect gives it a scratchy look. So we're doing what we see here on this side. And again, it might not be exactly the same face, but remember, we're doing a replica, a representation in cubist form. So now, for the details of the hand, again, you don't have to go ahead and do every single finger exactly the way that it is exactly curved. You can just go ahead and keep going back to your line tool, changing the outline to black, changing to the opacity to 100, and changing the width to 6. And what you can do, what I recommend, what I usually always recommend my students to do, when you're trying to do the details, it's important to zoom in. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just do lines, and then going back this way. And if you notice, I am just using the line tool. Notice how the fingers are not perfect. That's okay. There's only 4 fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a good enough representation. I'm going to leave it as is. In other places where I left out the details, I can go ahead and do the fingers here, or I can leave it like that. Like I said, it's not a big deal. You can go ahead and try to do the eye on your own. Another recommendation that I usually like to give students is whenever you notice the border too dark, and when you look at your drawing, if you don't have black areas within your drawing, one recommendation that I like to do is to go ahead and change the width of your line to, for say, an 8. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to make some of these lines a little bit darker. By simply adding really, really dark lines, it doesn't matter where, you don't have to keep following the original piece. Just by making dark lines, by outlining your entire piece, you're going to start making your entire painting stand out. So, last recommendation, take a really, really nice screenshot of your overall painting. Make sure it's cropped correctly. Make sure you don't crop too much from one side and then leave the other one to white. Make sure it's even. And then just don't forget to submit it. This is your final piece. Remember, it's abstract, it's cubism. It does not have to be perfect. You guys got this.